Welcome to the Podcast Editing and Support Show. My name is Dave. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go. We're going to start the episode right now. Happy to have you here. Let's do this. Okay, we're back and happy to be here with you. How about when we talk about building our podcast editing and support business, what's one thing we're missing? I think in the conversation is all of the things that we have to pay for to get set up. To be a podcast editor and support person, there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, everyone, that before we sit down with any podcaster and talk money and talk working with them and setting up a program and all that stuff, there's some stuff that happens in the background that I think we need to think about and talk about. And this all comes into our overhead costs, that sometimes they're one-time costs, sometimes they're monthly costs, yearly costs. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small. But whether it's a big amount or a small amount, it chips away every day, every week, every month, every year at the total amount of money that we make in podcast editing and support. And I think we need to have a very somber discussion around all of these tools that we fall in love with, but are chipping away at the amount of money that you can make. So let's talk about money. Let's talk about our fixed overhead costs, and even creating a business around podcast editing and support. And let's talk real numbers. Okay, here we go. So straight up off the top, I would suggest you work with your accountant. If you don't have one and you're really considering about doing business, that you spend time with an accountant, even if it's just get time in their calendar and sit down and unfurl in front of them your plans for your business, what you want to do, and get some great advice. Go find an accountant, somebody that your family or friends or your community trusts and recommends. Sit down and spend the money up front to figure out, what do I need to do where I live, in my state, my province, my country, my city, wherever. You know exactly what to do. Your accountant is a professional. They're up to date on all of the most recent tax laws and savings, and they can help you structure your business the right way. I am not an accountant. I have never been one. I hire one. I work with my accountant, and they take care of everything. And it's great because they have my back, and I give them my questions and they give me results. And it really works well. So find an accountant, please. When you're talking about your fixed overhead costs for your business, I don't think we consider this, because sometimes we get these costs and we sign on to these programs and we sign up for subscriptions over time, and they just kind of live in the background. Maybe we've been editing our own show and we have these costs associated to what we do, but we've never really considered how we could then maybe alleviate some of those costs or get a write-off for some of these costs through our accountant. Maybe there's a way to get some of that money back. So these are some ideas for you to consider and some things to think about as far as what might be your fixed overhead costs for your business as a podcast editor. 3 things to consider. Super quick episode, but I want you to think about these things as you plan out your business. You ready? First one, software subscriptions. I know it feels fun to click that add to cart, and I find some podcasters and podcast editors who have fallen into this trap of buying more apps and more programs than they'll ever use, and then losing track of what they spend their money on. It's coming to the end of the year. 2024 is wrapping up soon. And I would love for you to pull out your credit card statements and look at what have you subscribed to this year, and are you really using everything to the fullest extent of what it was purchased for? Or have you even forgot that you've been paying for something that you don't need to pay for? This is the time of year to look through your payments, your credit card statements, all of that stuff, and make sure that you're paying for what you need and you get rid of the stuff you don't need. But our software subscriptions, they include tools like if you use Adobe Audition, for example, or if you use Descript, or any social media scheduling platforms, or Calendly, or whatever. These subscriptions that you have to all these services, A, do you need them? B, are you going to continue with them? And how can you then use these subscriptions to support your business? You need to factor in, when you start looking at how much it costs to do business and what you need to charge for what you do in podcast editing and support, that not only are you covering your time, but you're covering the tools that allow you to do what you do. I would hate for you to just cover your time and then pay out of pocket for the tools that it takes you to do what you want to do as a podcast editor and support person. So what are your software subscriptions? Make a list. And then I would put in your calendar to send you reminders of when your subscriptions are coming due. A few days in advance, you get an email reminder or a text or whatever you want to set up. But something that reminds you goes, hey, your Descript subscription is coming due, your Adobe Audition subscription is coming due, whatever. And at that moment, you have a time to reflect and go, have I been really using this to what I thought I would be? Is this something I need or something I can get rid of? So if you don't track it, you're going to lose track and you will forget. And it'll automatically renew if it's already connected to your credit card, and you're going to have to wait for another year to make a change. Set up some reminders and have some way of keeping track of what you're actually paying for so that you know you're covering your costs between your time and your subscriptions. Very important. What's another thing to consider? And this, again, you need to talk with your accountant about, but it's around the depreciation of the equipment that you use as a podcast editor and support person. So I have a computer that's like probably older than your children. It's been around a long time, and I try to speak nicely to it so that it keeps moving, keeps going, and so far, so good. Knock on wood. Your equipment over time is going to depreciate. You got the best of the best, and now it's probably the worst of the worst. When all these new equipment comes out and technology comes out, you're always slightly behind. I joked recently when I bought a TV that it seemed like the moment I bought the TV and carried it out to my car, it was already out of date because they had the next round of TVs ready to take its place in the store. We're living in a world where we can't keep up with technology, and our computers, our software, whatever we have, depreciates over time. So you need to, with your accountant's help, factor in a portion of the cost of your computer, microphone, hardware, and how it depreciates over time.
That's a write-off?
Yeah.
Do you even know what a write-off is?
Yeah. It's when you buy something for your business and the government pays you back for it.
Oh, and who pays for it?
Nobody. You write it off.
Who writes it off?
I don't know. The write-off people. What? Why are we having this conversation?
That's not a write-off. This? Not a write-off.
It's not going to get better. It's not going to be worth more in the future. It's going to be worth less. So you need to somehow capture that depreciation value of the equipment you use and be able to put that through your taxes or some way your accountant is going to guide and direct you on how to address the depreciation of the tools that you use.
David, a write-off is a business expense used to reduce your taxable income.
Okay. Well then, why isn't it called a tax write-off?
It is! It is! You can't just buy things for yourself and write them off.
And you probably have never thought of this, but your microphone, your keyboard, your computer, your monitor, all of these hardware tools that you're using, they're going to break down. And one day you're going to need to replace them. So working through your accountant, maybe there's a way that you can accommodate the depreciation value of the equipment that you use on a regular basis. It's worth the conversation with your accountant. Again, they're going to give you the best information for where you live at this point in time, because that's what they do. So reach out to them and ask them about the depreciation of the equipment that you use. And then one last thing, is your general overall business expenses tied to your podcast editing and support business? Thanks for listening to the Podcast Editing and Support Show. Visit us at podcasteditingandsupport.com, podcasteditingandsupport.com. We would love to help you find a great podcast editor, or if you want to hire us, we would love to work with you. Podcasteditingandsupport.com. Catch you on the next episode. Take care.